Hey everyone, we're gonna get started. Winter's officially here, and it's cold in here, so I gotta wear my snow hat today. In Canada, we call this a toque when I used to live there. Anyways, hope you're doing well. I am doing this on LinkedIn, which is actually I've never used this platform before, and the thing I don't like about it is I can't see you or see who's here or things like that. But anyways, I am here and hold on a second. Okay. I noticed that we've showed up on LinkedIn. So I want to welcome you to this training. We're going to be talking about the inspirational manager. And this is such an important concept because, people they asked actually it was Kutz and Posner from the Leadership Challenge. They've surveyed over 100,000 people now, asking them what do they want from their leaders. And one of the top couple of things, besides they want their leaders to be honest and visionary, they want them to be inspiring, right? They want their leaders to be inspirational. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. I'm going to bring some slides up on the I'm also going to show you the three biggest problems that hold most managers back from being inspirational. And then lastly, a simple ritual that you can use from getting lost in the weeds, because that's what happens to a lot of managers, right? And I'm going to give you one little shift that will turn managers into inspiring leaders. Hey, if you don't know me, my name is James Robbins. I've been training and teaching leadership for a lot of years now. I wrote a book called 9 Minutes on Monday. Been privileged to be able to share the stage with some of my mentors like John Maxwell. This is actually us down in South America training leaders together, which was really fun for me. But here's the thing. As we talk about leadership today, what I need from you, because this is all about execution. And as Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank said, it's by execution, not by ideas, that people succeed. Okay. So I need to know that you are going to execute some of the stuff that we talked about here today. I'm also going to just go onto my phone and load up LinkedIn so that if you have any questions or comments, I'm going to be able to catch them as they come through. So let me just go there. Hang tight for a moment as we get started. Oops, I was on the wrong. There we go. Okay. Okay, let's jump in, everybody. Let's jump in. Listen, here's a sobering truth about leadership is that your success hinges on the motivation of your staff. And it's almost unfair in some ways that your success is not just your own, but in fact, as a leader, your success is hinges on the motivation of other people. Because if they're not motivated, then they don't do the work, which is under your accountability sphere, and then you're going to be held accountable for their motivation. Think of it in that way. You ultimately are held accountable for their motivation and engagement so that they get results. And if you don't do that, then obviously there's a problem. And in fact, the single biggest factor affecting employee engagement is how they are led. I want you to think about it in this way. When are the times in your career where you have been most engaged, where you have been most motivated, most excited to just jump into things? Typically, it's when there's a couple of factors that came in place, right? It was usually a strong vision, something that meant a lot to you, but typically there was a leader that was partly behind all of that. Rarely do people feel so motivated in their work and then go, "Oh, my boss is a real tool. I hate my boss. I don't like my boss at all." Rarely do those two go together. I'm so highly motivated and I love my workplace, and my boss is a tool. They just don't go together. So I want to talk about 3 problems that I've seen as I've worked with managers all over the country, not just the country, outside the country. And in some ways, they're a little bit like a question. The first one is this, they want to know, can I really motivate my staff? Now, some of you are in HR and you're here, or you're a senior executive and you have many managers under you. Others of you that are here today, you are listening to this, and you're a manager or supervisor and you just got your team. And maybe you're asking the same question. Can I really motivate my staff? I mean, really, how much influence do I actually have when it comes to staff motivation? Well, it depends who you're listening to, right? But there's a lot of stuff online that looks like this. Stop trying to motivate people. It won't work. These are just all articles online. And I always say, hey, like, you're not helping. And the people who say that, either they're coming from it from a clickbait, they just want you to read the article, or they don't understand motivation, because absolutely you can motivate people. Think about it in this way. Imagine that you are a foreman of a construction site, and imagine for a moment if we could actually see people's motivation dancing above their head, like it was like a video game, right? And we could look out immediately and see which members of our team are slacking and they're not pulling their weight. They're just not motivated. Now, the question is, can you do anything about that, right? Apart from threatening them, that's not great, but can you do anything else to actually get them to be motivated? Well, let's take a look at what some of the research has found. Gallup found through extensive research, the relationship with a manager largely determines the length of an employee's stay, how long someone stays with the company. Here's from Saratoga. 50% of employees' happiness at work is directly linked to their relationship with their immediate boss. Ouch, right? And then this one, managers account for 70% of the variance scores in employee engagement scores across business units. In other words, we know what drives engagement. We know what makes managers feel, or employees feel, engaged. And 70% of that is within your grasp. It's within your influence. It's not 100%, 70%. That's pretty good. In other words, when I have a manager say to me, well, I just can't motivate this guy. He's a bad employee. He's impossible to motivate. And that concept of impossible to motivate, no, that manager has just not realized how to tap into the 70% that's within their influence, right? And so when your managers buy into engagement, it initiates intrinsic motivation within themselves. So again, for those of you who are in HR, your managers have to buy into this, or it doesn't matter how much you train them, how much you do for them, they are just not going to put in their best effort to try to motivate. And for those of you who are managers here, then understand this, that until you buy into this, right? Until you buy into this and realize, like, wait a minute, I am the major factor in the motivation and engagement levels of my staff, you won't lead as effectively as you can. In other words, if you're blaming your company culture, if you're blaming, like, well, if our CEO is more visionary, or if we didn't have all these crazy things that are going on in our company, like, listen, you might have crazy things going on. You might have a crazy CEO. Who knows? Many of that doesn't matter as much as you think. It's what you're going to do with your employees that makes all the difference. So can I really motivate my staff? Absolutely you can. You just have to believe that you can. And then that brings up the second thing. Okay, well, if I can, then how do I do it, right? Where do I focus? I'm not sure where. Well, I'm going to show you that. So this is a picture of a nebula. And, we use this term not only to describe things in the universe, but we also use it in today's vernacular to describe something that's not quite tangible, that doesn't have clean edges. So we say that concept is rather nebulous, right? Well, leadership is a little bit nebulous, if you will. Somebody said that to me once. They said, hey, it's so great that you teach leadership, because leadership can really be nebulous. And I know what they were saying, because you're dealing with people. You're dealing with, in many times, an art over a science. And there's not necessarily a formula that's easy to implement. Compare a nebula to a checklist. A checklist is we love checklists because they're clear, helps us know what we need to do next. And as we accomplish tasks and cross them off, it actually lowers our stress. And we feel like we're getting something done, and that contributes to our own feelings of competence, productivity. And it's all good things, right? All good things. But what happens with leadership is when you're a leader, you have tasks, you have a big checklist. I know you do, right? But then you have this nebulous side of leadership. Well, when you have these two options always in front of you, because you can never get everything done, what do most people tend to lean towards? They lean towards the tasks, right? They lean towards the checklist. After all, what's easier, to return an email to a customer, or to go deal with Mary's bad attitude from the team meeting this morning, right? Which one's less nebulous? You're gonna go return the email. So this is one of the problems when it comes to leadership, is that leaders shy away from the nebulous concepts because they're not clear, and sometimes there's no easy win, and they are sucked into task work, right? Task work. And that's where leadership suffers. And so we want to get back to, what are the things that you need to be doing as a leader to make sure that you are helping your staff grow. I like what John Wooden said. He said, I discovered early on that the player who has learned the fundamentals of basketball is going to have a much better chance of succeeding and rising through the levels of competition than the player who is content to do things his own way. Fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. Guess what? Leadership is no different. It comes down to fundamentals. I'm going to talk about some of these fundamentals in terms of employee motivation, and they have to do with something called the engagement drivers. The engagement drivers, there's 9 engagement drivers, and what these are, they are like, think of them also like switches. They're emotional needs and psychological needs that get met in our lives, and in this context, in the workplace. But when these needs are met, it's like it turns on this burst of motivation. And when it does, then people feel more engaged, they feel more motivated, they're able to tap into these intrinsic sources, right? So like I said, they're a little bit like when someone meets one of these needs, you flip a switch. And I'm going to walk through all of these just really quickly so you understand. Because for those of you who are wondering, like, hey, I want to become a better boss, I want to become more inspirational, I want to help my staff, lead better, then for sure you want to listen to this. All right. So these needs, we're going to walk through them all. And the first 3, you see these blue arrows here. I know you can't see that, screen's too small, but I'll walk through them. These first 3 needs actually have to do with needs of the employee themselves. And the first one is this. It's the need to be more than a number. In other words, to care about staff. Now, you might think, well, yeah, of course we need to care about our staff, but there's a difference between knowing and your staff feeling cared about. If you've ever been married, you understand this concept, right? There's a difference between your partner feeling loved and what you think you're doing to make them feel loved, right? It's always defined by the receiver here. And in fact, there was a worldwide survey done by Towers Perrin, now Towers Watson, and they asked people, what engages you? What's a driver of engagement for you? And you know what they said? The number one driver, over 90,000 people said this around the world. They said, when senior management takes a genuine interest in me as a person. When senior management takes a genuine interest in me as a person, they said that was one of the prime drivers. Now, why would that be? There's a lot of different reasons to this, but really it comes down to 2 things: trust and reciprocity. You see, on a subconscious level, we're always seeking safety. And we do this in our relationships, in how we handle our money, how the risks we take, and we do it at work without us even realizing it. So we're always trying to seek a safe place. This is why it's so hard for people to take chances, to get out of their comfort zone. That's an unsafe place. Well, in the workplace, where people are constantly trying to find safety, be respectful to the boss, don't get the boss angry at you, don't get in a fight with a coworker, all these things. So we manage this on a subconscious level. But when somebody cares about us, it helps us relax a little bit, because if we believe that they care about us, then we believe they are less likely to pull out a dagger and stab us in the middle of the night, metaphorically speaking, of course. Right? So when you feel like your boss cares for you, then you're able to let down your guard a little bit, which actually lets you lean into the workplace. Now, this doesn't happen on a conscious level. This happens on a subconscious level. This is why this is so important. And the other part of this is reciprocity. There's so much research to back up that when you do something nice for somebody, let's say somebody does something nice to you, like buys you lunch out of the blue, and often we'll fight that, right? We'll say, "Oh no, like let me buy," and this little argument goes on, and then we only you know ease up when we say something like, "Okay, well, you can buy this time, but only if I can get it next time." We can't help but have this reciprocity that, hey, I want to do something back. And in the same way, like when somebody gives you a gift out of the blue, you feel special, but you feel indebted. It's kind of this weird thing that goes on. Well, in the same way in the workplace, when you are caring about your staff and they feel like you really care about them, then they can't help but to reciprocate, because to not reciprocate, at least not to have the desire, is not only unsafe, it goes against every value that most people have been raised with, right? Unless you're raised a total selfish ingrate, then someone's not going to think like that. But when a boss cares for us, we want to care back. And how do we do that? We do that by wanting to work hard for them, wanting to make sure that they don't get in trouble, right? We want to do our part. We don't want to let them down. This is why bosses who are more on the relational end, right? If we got like results end and the relational end, both have their places. But bosses on the relational end, one of their strengths is that relationship actually creates reciprocity, where people don't want to let the boss down, because they truly don't want to let them down, right? Whereas on the opposite end, sometimes they don't want to let the results boss down, because they don't want to get in trouble. Two very different sources of motivation. So anyways, what I'm talking about here is making sure that our our leadership is always going from transactional to relational. There is a transactional nature to leadership, of course. They come in, they're going to do a bunch of things, you're going to pay them, right? That's the transaction. But we have to evolve from that transaction. Like when I go buy my groceries, that's a transaction. I have a transactional relationship with the person who's checking out my groceries. But in the workplace, we have to elevate that to be more relational. I'm not talking about friends. We're not talking about being friends here, but we are talking about that relational component, which comes from you taking a genuine interest in them as people. Check this out. This was a company was going through our signature program, our leadership program, and they just went through the first section of it where we were talking about, hey, care about your staff. And I got this email, and this is really cool. You probably can't see it. I don't know if I can see it. Let me zoom in here. This is an HR manager or director named Neil, and he said one of our managers has been experiencing a very difficult and discouraging relationship with her director. When I came in this morning, she took me aside to say that her director had approached her at the end of the day yesterday to express her excitement about 9 minutes and to apologize for the first time for the way she had treated that manager. She admitted that she'd taken her eyes off the important things to focus on the light bulb. It was apparently an extremely cathartic and healing moment for both. So I often ask people in a live setting, you've got this director who all of a sudden started to realize, like, I don't treat this staff person very well. I don't care about them. And they realize I need to change. And for them, their first step was an apology. Sometimes that's necessary. But they brought them in, they apologized for being stuck in all the task work. And so I always ask people, what do you think that did for that other employee? Did it make them less motivated? Or would that have potentially actually engaged them more? And everyone says it would have engaged them more. Of course, right? Again, it's the power of relationships versus transactional relationships. So one of the things that we have to be doing consistently is making sure that we are doing these small things that demonstrate we care about our staff. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just to show a genuine interest in those that we lead. Okay. All right. Let's go on to driver number 2. And while I do that, if you guys have some questions, go ahead and you can write them in. I think you can write them in the LinkedIn comments there. I'm going to go check right now. Let's go. Okay. There you go. If you have questions, you can put them in the comment section. That will work. There we go. Okay. Awesome. Everything's working. Driver number 2, grow. I'll go through the others much quicker, but these first couple are foundational. And that is that the second driver is our need to grow and develop. This is a strong driver for everybody. And when people are in a mindless job where there's no growth, there's nothing for them to get better at. It's a place of stagnation. And so it does nothing to draw on the intrinsic motivational sources that bring out the best in people, right? But when people are challenged, then all of a sudden things change, right? And so let me introduce you to something that you probably have heard before, the 70-20-10 learning model. It's very popular in training circles. And the idea here is that 70% of on-the-job of learning comes from on-the-job experience. Meanwhile, another 20% from mentoring and coaching, and then 10% is more like your classrooms, courses, webinars, like you guys sitting on this webinar right now. That would be an example of that, right? And but here's the thing: when it comes to your staff, you want to be helping them grow and develop always. And where you come in is right in that middle circle, that mentoring and coaching. That's where you're going to be doing most of the heavy lifting. It's not in the necessarily classroom courses and reading, though you might direct them towards that. But you don't have to stand up and be the teacher. But you want to get them directed where they can go get the information. Then you're going to coach them as they go into the workplace and implement it. So the good news here is that you don't have to be like this guy who knows all the answers and sits on top of a mountain waiting for people to come to you. You don't have to be that person. In fact, all growth begins with clarity, and it really begins with one clarifying question. And this one question is going to save you so much time and give you so much direction. And it's simply this: what's going to make employee's name more effective? What's going to make Joey more effective? What's going to make Susan more effective than she is now? And if you just put a little thought into that, you will come up with minimum one thing, but probably 2, 3, 4 different things. That if Susan got better at this, she would actually be more effective at her job. And if she's more effective at her job, then she does a better job, which actually means I do a better job. There's definitely selfish reasons to help your staff grow, right? And that is to help them figure out what they need to grow in. So as I'm coaching, when I teach managers, I'll have them like literally pull out paper and just go, what's going to, pick one of your employees, what's going to make them more effective? And then they come up with something. And I'm like, awesome. Now what you need to do is start the growth process. And the best way to do that is just on the fly coaching. You're going to raise the issue with them so they begin to realize that's an issue, so that they buy into that, right? Then you are going to sit down with them and help them plot a path. And then a lot of it from there is just follow up and tweaking. But it's that whole coaching process that you begin, that then what happens for people, it gives them that extra boost of engagement where they are able to jump in. Okay. Driver number 3 is about recognition. Recognition, the need to be recognized and appreciated. In fact, in one survey, they said, hey, what could we do more to improve engagement? 58% people said just give recognition. That's all you have to do. Just recognize us, right? So here's the thing about recognition. We all know that recognition is important, but we also know eating healthy is important. We also know going to the gym is important. Doesn't mean we do it. And it's the same with recognition. Recognition often gets pushed to the wayside because there's so much to do. We're busy checking off things on our to-do list. And then sometimes we even have an internal resistance of why we would recognize somebody. But recognition does this. Number one, it does motivate. It does motivate people who feel less motivated. And then secondly, most importantly, it shapes behavior. Recognition is your most powerful tool to shape behavior. In fact, nothing you have is as powerful as recognition, because what you want to do as a manager, as a leader, you are in the business of shaping behavior. Like, you are in the business of shaping behavior. What behavior is good and you want to see more of it that produces the results, great. We want more of that. And any behavior that takes us away from reaching our goals, we need to lean into that. I mean, almost like leadership management in its simplest form is that. It is shaping behavior. And so that's what we do with recognition. And when I'm working with managers or when they're going through one of my programs, what they do is they sit down and they think, what are the most important behaviors I need to see from my team, or even individually? What are the most important behaviors I need to see? And then we begin to recognize those behaviors. And the more we reinforce that, the more it happens. All right. So, and then lastly, recognition reinforces culture. And that's how we instill the values of the organization, by we first know them, and then secondly, recognize the behaviors that exhibit those. That is key. All right. Okay, that is driver number 3. The bottom line is recognition should be strategic. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment. We just talked about these 3 things, right? 3 out of 9. We just talked about 3 out of 9. I want you to imagine that if you're in HR or upper management, I want you to imagine if your managers were coming in to the office every week and they are making an intention. I'm going to care about my staff. I'm going to take a genuine interest in them. I'm not going to just have a transactional leadership, but I'm going to have a relational leadership. Secondly, I'm helping them grow. There's always somebody I'm working with to coach them so they get better. And thirdly, I'm strategically recognizing the behaviors we need to see more of. I'm recognizing those at work so people feel good, they feel motivated, but also our culture is reinforced. If people just started doing those 3 things consistently, you think that would make a difference in your organization? Like, would that make a difference in how people were showing up? Absolutely, right? And that's just 3 things. Now imagine if we begin to add in the other things I'm about to talk to you about, then amazing stuff begins to happen. All right, let's continue on. So we're talking about the next 3, and basically, for people who say that you can't motivate people, uh, I like this. Not a runner, now you are. All right, you are. I don't know about you. I'm motivated. The bear has motivated me for sure. Here's someone else. Walk away fatty. They put fridge magnets on their fridge. Is this motivating? I guess for some, it's poor. It's terrible motivation, right? It's a shame-based motivation. But here's the thing: motivation exists on a um, spectrum, right? Motivation exists on a spectrum. And in fact, a good way for us to look at that, I often use this example. Imagine that these 3 guys all live on the same street. They all live on the same street, and each one of them has to mow his lawn on Saturday. The guy on the far left, where it says HOA, he doesn't want to mow his lawn, but he gets this angry letter from the Homeowners Association saying, if you don't mow your lawn, we're going to fine you. Right? So he angrily gets his mower out and mows the lawn. Well, neighbor number 2 doesn't want to mow his lawn either. He's watching the college football game. But his wife comes by and says, hey, my mom's coming into town tomorrow. I'd love the yard to look nice. Can you mow it? If you do, I'll make you your favorite chocolate cake. And then he's like, yeah, for sure. We've incentivized the task, right? We've made it more appealing by adding a reward, right? And so we do this in the workplace through pay, through bonuses, through good perks and things like that. Nothing wrong with it, but he gets out and he mows the lawn. Well, the third guy, the guy in the far right, he loves mowing his lawn. He loves the exercise. He loves the smell of fresh cut grass, but he especially loves at the end to put the mower away, stand on the street and look at his place that he worked so hard to buy, and he feels proud that it looks good. And he also knows he's being a good neighbor, right? So all three lawns got cut, but let me ask this question. Who did the best job cutting their grass? Neighbor one, neighbor two, or neighbor three? Who did the best job? And everyone agrees. They're like, neighbor three. Exactly. And who blew grass all over the road and never swept it up? Right? Neighbor one. Exactly. So you think about it in this way. All three got the job done, but not all three got the job done with the same level of excellence. And it all has to do with one thing, the source of the motivation. See, this is what's so important. When you begin to understand this vaults you into the top couple of percent of leaders across the country. When you understand that the actual source of motivation will dictate the quality of the job done. And if we were to put this in more layman's terms, the guy on the left had a have to motivation, right? Highly controlled, threats, punishment. The guy in the middle, he wanted to, that's important, wanted to get the cake. And the third guy, he gets to do this. It's a place that comes from inside, right? He not only does he want to, but the reward is in the work itself. And this is the key. So these next three needs that we're going to talk about, a good way for you to remember them is that everybody needs a mountain to climb. They need a reason to climb it and enough rope to hang themselves along the way. A mountain to climb, reason to climb it, and enough rope to hang yourselves along the way. If you can remember those three things, I'm telling you, this is going to serve you so well. So let's jump into this. First need is about achievement. It's about having a mountain to climb. What are we talking about? People need clear goals in the workplace. They need something that they're going after. And if it's not a tangible goal we can measure, then they at very least need success so clearly defined that they could know how they're doing. In other words, there is some kind of feedback mechanism that can come back and say, you're doing amazing, you're doing okay, or hey, you're not doing very well. And so they need a clear goal, but the feedback mechanism, a lot of that is the leader, right? People defer to you to figure out like, hey, how am I doing? They want to know. Somebody is a salesperson and you guys are selling a new product. And so your salespeople, they're going on their first few calls trying to pitch the new product and you're listening to the calls. Well, they want to know, how did I do? They want to know, right? So this is such an important piece. Everyone needs a mountain to climb. Now, if you have an employee right now and you can't give them specific feedback on their progress, like in other words, just think of one of your employees right now and think, I'm going to go give Shelly feedback on her progress. If that stumps you, then that tells you that there's no mountain for them to climb. You have to get them on a mountain, even if it's a small one, even a growth goal that they're like something that they're working towards that's specific and clear and challenging, right? So that's an important piece to our psychology when it comes to motivation. Everybody needs a mountain to climb. Also, everyone needs a reason to climb it. When it comes to our work, we need to find purpose in it. And so what we do as managers, as our boss, what we have to do as a boss is we have to help people connect what they're doing to something larger, right? What they're doing to something larger. And there's many different ways to do that. I'll just give you a couple of quick ones that I teach in my program. Number one is answering the question, who do we serve? Right? Because the answer isn't clients, right? Who do we serve? And the more we can put a picture to that, like who do we serve um, with what we do? And and another question you can ask is, what job is our product or our service hired to do? It's just another way to reframe your company, right? Like your company puts out a product or service. And it's not like people really want the product or the service. They want the product or service because it's going to do something for them. In other words, they are hiring your product to do a job. What's that job? So, in other words, I was working with a cosmetic company. They were selling cosmetics. And I asked them, why do women buy cosmetics? And they said, oh, women buy cosmetics to look beautiful or to feel beautiful. And I'm like, yes, that's the job. That's your job. Your job isn't selling cosmetics. Your job is to help women feel beautiful. Now we could completely change the frame of how women are going to maybe conduct a makeover and upsell product. It comes from a different place. We're connecting purpose to pay. And instead of just praising them for sales, you're also going to be praising them for, did you see how that woman walked out of here so confident? I mean, she had her head up high. It was so different than when she came in. That's a large part to the work you just did with her, right? So that's how we then begin to link purpose to pay. And the last one is autonomy, enough rope to hang yourself along the way. And this is, nobody likes a micromanaging boss. Nobody likes a micromanaging boss. And so what we're looking for is a little bit of rope, right? And we've got to give people choice at work. And if they don't have that, it shuts them down. So let's go back to this again. I've just covered this all that I'm going to have time to cover. But these 6 needs: care, they need to be more than a number; grow, they need to grow and develop; recognize, right? Imagine that you or your other managers, they just start coming in every week and they care about people. They're coaching somebody. They're recognizing the right behaviors strategically. They're making sure they're giving feedback on people's progress and leaning in if they need to have a conversation about it. They're helping people connect purpose to pay. And number 6, they are giving them room to be empowered on their own. Those 6 things there. If you just did that, you would see an instant increase in the engagement and the motivation of your staff. Now, there's 3 more. I'm not going to have time to go into those, but they have to do with the environment that we come from, right? The environment that we come from. So I'm going to be teaching on this further next week. And if you want to attend, then make sure you watch my LinkedIn account. I'll give you all the details here. If you want more information on 9 Minutes on Monday, the program that a lot of this work is coming from, then make sure you send me a DM. You can just connect with me here on LinkedIn, send me a DM, and I will connect with you and let you know more about the program, how it works, and how you can get started. Okay. All right. Listen, we are out of time and I'm going to have to get going. But remember, leadership comes down to doing the little things consistently, not checklists, but the little things with engaging people. And these are some of the things that I talked about today. If you want to learn more about the engagement drivers or even the 3 that we didn't cover, then make sure you show back up next week that you register for the free training. All right. That's it for today, everybody. We will chat with you later. I hope that you have a fantastic one. Stay safe, and we shall talk to you soon.